The children of Glenda Hoskins have protested against the release of her killer, fearing he could strike again. There she is. Victor Farrant was given a whole life prison term in 1998 for drowning Glenda. Glenda had been his girlfriend. He drowned her in the bathtub of her home. A judge said he was so dangerous and his actions were so terrible that in Farrant's case, life should mean just that. However, the children of Mrs Hoskins said officials have contacted them to say Farrant, who's in his 70s, could be released on compassionate grounds because he's only got months to live. Iain, Katie and David Hoskins said the idea of his compassionate release made their blood boil. The Cabinet Minister Penny Mordaunt MP for Portsmouth, where Mrs Hoskins was murdered, has written a letter, which I've just got here, to the Justice Secretary to say this release mustn't happen. The Ministry of Justice said no formal application to release Farrant has been made and compassionate release was only agreed in exceptional circumstances. Well, Susannah, what do you think?
Absolutely not. I mean, life should mean life, and I'm just staggered that this question has even been raised. Compassionate leave, whether he's ill or not. And it begs the question as to why it's happened. Is it because he's so ill? We don't know officially that he has cancer, but is it because the hospital system can't look after him? What is it? I mean, the crimes he committed were so abhorrent.
And a whole string of them as well,
and
culminating.
And then, you know, where do you draw the line?
Well, I suppose this came to our attention first, this idea that however bad the crime, if you're dying, you can get out. In a very famous case of a man called Abdul Basit Ali al-Magraki,
he was the Lockerbie.
The Lockerbie bomber, and this guy's responsible for 270 murders. There he is, and went to jail and then was released. But actually, we were told he had weeks to live. He lived for 3 years, Henry.
He did live a lot longer than people expected, and that did embarrass the authorities in Scotland, who thought he had only months to live. I'm going to go to Dostoevsky with a quote here, and he said, "The degree of civilization of a society can be judged by entering its prisons, and it's not in how we celebrate people who are great in the society, but how we treat those who we despise, that we judge a society." And we decided about 60 years ago it was no longer civilised to take people to a place of lawful execution, donning the black cap, and hang them to the neck until they were dead. We sentence about 300 people a year to life in this country. Those are people who have killed somebody. And at this point, there's around 5,000 lifers. We release 300 people from life sentences every year, and they serve not 30 years or whole of life, they serve on average about 16.5 years, and we decide that the risk, the retribution and the rehabilitation elements of their sentence has been satisfied. And these are people who've not been released on compassionate grounds. Now here we have somebody, I don't know about the details of his case, who, if he's got months to live, and if he doesn't pose a danger, we understand that he's got a real hatred of women. If he's a big, fit, strong 70-year-old who still poses a risk, then perhaps he should not be released. But ordinarily, if somebody has just months to live and they can't get the hospice care in prison, and often that is the key question,
which they can't,
then I would say, if they've got weeks to live, release them and give them the care.
OK, let's get a closer perspective on this from Iain Hoskins, who's very much involved because he is Glenda Hoskins' son. And you were so shocked when you got this letter, Iain.
Yeah, it was an email that my brother received just out of the blue. And there'd been some delay in getting the letter to us or to my brother. And it was that this was happening imminently. We had a matter of weeks to wrap our head around this. And work out our response, really. But from our perspective, details were very, very thin. We didn't really know. We were told very few details. We don't know the absolute accuracy of his health. You know, again, like Henry had mentioned before, I think our perspective would be different if he was leaving prison to go to an end of care hospice where he literally was dying outside of the prison because they don't have that specialist care there. That will be different, but they contacted us. And the first paragraph are talking about exclusion zones. So that to me seems like that's someone that's relatively fit and well enough to travel around the country in order to ask us the question to exclude our geographical areas of where we live. So it was incredibly hard for us.
And in terms of his offending, he had already had a 12-year sentence for rape. He came out of prison for that in the 90s. He then beat a woman almost to death called Mrs Fiddler. She survived incredibly. Then he murdered your mum. And I hate to take you back to that day, but I understand your sister, who was then 15, found your mum.
She did, yeah. She discovered my mum's body after she'd been raped and murdered, rolled up in a carpet that was in our attic. So, I mean, my sister was 15. My brother was in the house at the time when my dad and the police were searching it, and he was 13. So they were incredibly young. And as you mentioned before, Jeremy, he'd only been out of prison 2 months, and he'd been released early on parole. He'd been released on day release up to 3 years before that date as well. And again, to me, it's unbelievable that you would have somebody released from prison for the crimes that he did previously and able to go about society and meet my mum. And obviously he got in contact with this other woman and pretty much left her for dead a month before my mum. And he went on the run for 5 months and evaded authorities, and again was only caught via a Crime Watch appeal that we did. Yeah, I think for us, the danger feels that it's history repeating itself again. I think if someone has got, why is he petitioning his own release? And this is one thing that we don't understand. I have asked who is petitioning his release. Is it the prison? Is it himself? Is it someone on the outside? We haven't been told that yet, but his family have disowned him. His sisters want nothing more to do with him. I think they're his only surviving relatives. So for our point of view, and I don't want to be hysterical about this, why does he want to be released if he's only got months to live? You know, I mean, this is someone who's got a hatred of women, someone that's vengeful, and someone that's never, ever shown any remorse for his crimes whatsoever.
And it sounds, Iain, from what you've already said, as if you and your brother and sister genuinely worry if he gets out, he may try and see you.
Yeah, and I don't want to feel that we're being hysterical or over emotional with this, but I mean, that was definitely during the trial, the fact he went on the run for 5 months. I mean, even when he was sentenced, my sister still believed that he would find some way of escaping and coming for her, and the same for my brother as well. So we do feel he poses a risk, not only to us, but to the public at large as well. Because, I mean, everyone can sit there and debate this, but, listen, I do believe in rehabilitation, but this does call into question people's confidence in the law. Now, I don't believe in the death penalty, but in the case of this, if I actually thought that he could be released, I mean, he's not just got a life sentence, he's got a whole life sentence, and that is different. Justice Butterfield, who sentenced him, was very, very clear and said you should never be released again. And it was built in that he would die in prison. That was never a case for debate at the time, whether it was a terminal illness or natural causes. His original sentence was he should die in prison.
Susannah.
Wow.
I'm so sorry, even for what you've been through and for your sister. I just think, like you say, I mean, yes, there is always an argument for, compassion and showing some kind of forgiveness. But, Victor, he's still relatively young. He could live for a long time. If he is a threat, which he has proved to be to women, then he should stay. And also, it's as respect to your mother's memory and what you all went through at the time. And if I was in your situation, it would feel like I would lose faith in the justice system.
I've got to say, I've got to commend Iain for the way in which he broke down the case, his assessment of the key points. He didn't sound consumed by bitterness, hatred or revenge. It's about safeguarding, it's about the public, and it's about honesty. And fidelity to what the original judge said. And you did say as well, Iain, that if he was really at the end of life and if he was pretty incapacitated and couldn't pose a danger, then you would contemplate some kind of hospice care. I just kind of salute you and commend you for that.
But Henry, there's certain people you would never... If Wayne Couzens was this ill, the policeman who killed Sarah Everard, you'd never let him out. Apart from anything else, he might be in danger himself.
Very possibly. I mean, he's only in his 40s. This other guy, Farrant, is in his 70s.
70s isn't old.
I know, but I said if he was a very infirm 70-year-old and he could be, not reminded as such, but if he were in hospice care and couldn't leave, and then for the final 10 weeks, 12 weeks of his life was helped to, onto his final journey, to be mourned probably by very few people, then so be it. We talk about being a civilised society. It's what we do. supposedly.
I'm guessing you think about your mum an awful lot, Iain.
Yeah, I mean, we rebuilt our lives after what happened. Obviously, that was very, very difficult. And it feels that we've gone back to exactly where we were all those years ago. The horror and the anxiety of him being at large now is as vivid as what it was all those years ago when he was on the run and we didn't know if he could attack again. And this is the point. He showed absolutely no remorse. He pleaded not guilty in prison, even though in the trial, I believe, even though the evidence was absolutely overwhelming. And that just, to have him released in this way when we've got no details of his health other than he is got a terminal disease. Now, as we mentioned before, some people can live for years and years and years. And my main worry is, what has he got to lose now by being released? And that to me is the biggest threat. What has he got to lose? Because when he was released last time in prison, he refused all psychiatric help and he murdered and pretty much then murdered another woman within 2 or 3 months of him being released last time around. I mean, this just should never be considered. I mean, this isn't just about us and our story. This is about the public at large and people's confidence in the justice system.
Yeah.
Thank you, Iain, very much indeed. Regards to your family. Thanks for joining us and talking about your mum. Thank you. And we'll talk. I think we'll take a break and talk a bit more about your views on this, whether actually if somebody is right at the end of their life, they should be released, even if they've committed heinous crimes, as in the case of Victor Farrant. Let's talk a bit more about whether terminally ill killers should be released from prison, no matter what they did, what crime. 0207 862 2222. On the line, we've got Graham in Glasgow. Graham, this is a story close to your heart, I know.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Yeah, I understand that the person's point of view, he's only concerned about other women's safety. I don't believe in somebody being released for the crimes he's committed. For whatever reason, he's been sentenced to life. That's what he should serve. He's a danger to the public. And it's not fair to risk the public just because he's got an illness.
And you, I know, lost a family member to murder. Is that right?
Yes, my wee sister. The person who murdered my wee sister got out on parole against everybody else's advice. But they decided to be humane and give him a chance. Then he went on a wee rampage of raping and he ended up murdering my wee sister. So,
well,
I honestly don't understand people. I understand the compassion of people wanting to let them out. I really do. But I don't think it's safe for the public.
no. Well, I'm really sorry about what happened to you, and I'm hoping the perpetrator's back in jail. Are they?
No, fortunately, he's dead.
Okay, but you, even if the murderer of your sister had, let us say, the very end stage of cancer, you would still have said, "Look, I'm sorry, you can't be free."
Yes, 100%. I'd be more concerned about other young women out in the street. The same as that family is. They're not being malicious. They're concerned about other females.
Thank you,
They're
Graham.
a very compassionate family.
No, I totally agree. Iain's a very intelligent and thoughtful man. Thank you very much, Graham. You take care. Thank you.
We're changing our attitude toward the risk and retribution element of our sentences, because until about 10 years ago, the number of people on a whole life sentence, it would never be released, was about 21 or 22. Now it's 70. And so it's now common to hear a judge say, these crimes are so appalling, you will go for a minimum tariff of 30 years or 40 years or whole of life. So I think judges are reflecting the public mood and, of course, put direction from government and the Justice Secretary to say, by the time you come out, you will not be able to offend anymore.
But whole of life, it means what it says on the tin, right? It doesn't mean whole of life unless you get sick. Deborah in Greater Manchester, hi.
Yeah, hi, gentlemen.
What do you think about the Hoskins case here, or the Victor Farrant case, I should say?
Well, actually, I agree with the chap that was on a moment ago. I think he's called Graham.
Yeah.
I just do not believe he should be allowed out on compassionate grounds. I don't think he should be, or he has been rehabilitated, so there's nothing to stop him. He's got nothing to lose if he wants to carry out a further violent act, because we don't know how infirm he is. And if he's in a hospice, what's to say he can't just get up, walk out, attack one of the staff?
Yeah.
You know, he's got nothing to lose at all.
Well, also
So,
the lack of, you'd hope that after 20, 30 years in jail, he would be at least sorry and might have said he was sorry. I mean, I think maybe you should say, look, you can't see daylight until you say, I am sorry for what I did. I guess he denies it still. Damon on Facebook says it depends on the crimes committed and the term served. If they pose no threat to society, then yes, let them spend the last days with their family. Let's have a word with Emily in London. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
What do you think, Emily?
I don't think at all that he should be released for various reasons. I do agree with Henry. A civilised society deals with its misfits, and that's too good a term for this man. But for me, I mean, I'm sure you've all seen the advertising campaign in the moment, that there's 1 in 4 people don't get the terminally care they need when we're dying on the outside. So for me, bearing in mind that whole life tariff has always been available, why aren't the prison put in provision for when this happened? Yes, I agree if he's got family wants to spend with him, but it should be within the prison system. Because, you know, he's been given a whole life tariff for a reason, and people die. People die who aren't on whole life prison, sadly, in custody. But ultimately, there should be better provision within the prison system. You know, he
Yeah, I
should be able
suppose
to
if you think about it, if he goes to a hospice, the hospice has got other customers there. I mean, I would like to know if I was 91 and the guy next to me was a murderer.
Well, exactly, and I did mention that to your researchers, and I think as well the other issue. I mean, we don't know when we're in any hospital environment who's done what in the bed next to us, but ultimately, if it was my old mum, I wouldn't want them, even if it was separate rooms. And I just think, how's he going to be managed? And then he comes out, and if he's not at the point of needing hospice care, I'm assuming, going to be in some sort of halfway house, which means that he, you know, terminally ill is such a broad term. I've known people that last for quite a long time, sadly, obviously, they're ill and their life does change. And I've known people diagnosed literally one weekend and sadly gone in a month.
Emily, I think the guidelines, I mean, I've looked at a BM...
OK, Emily, thank you.
I looked at an old British Medical Journal report which talked about 3 months. If a doctor, possibly 2 doctors, deem that this person is going to die within 3 months, then the recommendation could be made. Not as this guy could be around for 2 more years.
No, but the Lockerbie bomber was supposed to die in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he did 3 years. I've got no idea how that happened. It's astonishing.
But it seems that there's no kind of transparency on this yet. No one.
That's a key point.
Yeah, no one knows how ill he is. No one knows where he's going to go. No one knows if he has, you know, he has apologised, if he feels any remorse. And that, you know, the poor Hoskins family, they don't know. All they see is that he's going to be released.
Thank you.